Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm Brandon. I bet you already forgot about your team's best and worst moments from the 2021/22 NFL season, Perna. That's why I'm here to remind you of your ultimate success and your greatest failure as we warm up for Super Bowl 56. Please subscribe to this YouTube channel if you like weird football videos. Speaking of weird, why? Why do you look like this, Brandon? Well, we raised over $20,000 for the Alzheimer's Association. Thank you to everyone who donated and joined the live stream. And I said if we got to 20,000, I would shave a monkey tail beard into my face. So this is just who I'm gonna be for the next couple weeks. But it was for a good cause. That's good at sports. Every team's best and worst moments. Let's begin with the Washington football team Commanders. Worst, the raw sewage leaking on your fans every week at your stadium. Worst, Ryan Fitzpatrick getting hurt in the first quarter of the first game of the season. Your owner, Dan Snyder, having another claim of sexual harassment drop on him just days after announcing your new team name is the Commanders, which, like your leaky pipes, was leaked a day before the huge reveal. Best, starting not one but two spring league QBs this season in Taylor Heineke and even AAF legend What's Eating Garrett Gilbert Grape. The Titans. Best, beating the hell out of the Chiefs 27-3 in October, a game that would ultimately give them the edge for the 1 seed and that sweet first round bye. Worst, earning the 1 seed in the AFC and that first round bye just to be outdone by 3 Ryan Tannehill picks in the divisional round. Tennessee got pretty lucky they kept that 1 seed after losing to the Steelers because they huddled on the Steelers logo, which was the only reason they lost that game. Also, losing Derrick Henry to injury, that was a huge worst. He did come back for the postseason but wasn't the same. And prior to the injury, he was on pace for well over 2,000 rushing yards. Steelers' best? Well, the Steelers' best moment came when Daniel Carlson nailed the game-winning field goal for the Raiders that sent the Pittsburgh Steelers to the playoffs, avoiding what would have been the most heartbreaking tie of all time. And TJ Watt getting the sack record, also pretty nice. Worst, Big Ben goes out on a low note, getting blown out by Kansas City in the wild card round with Jackson Mahomes tick-tocking on his football grave. The Buccaneers' best? The Bucs' best moment came back in Week 14 when they beat the Bills in overtime thanks to a 58-yard walk-off touchdown by Breshad Perriman, giving Tampa Bay their 10th win in 13 games. The Bucs' best moment for the fans? Antonio Brown stripping his way off the field against the Jets, which if Tampa would have lost that game would have made it a worst, but they won and got rid of Antonio Brown. A true win-win. Worst, leaving Cooper Kupp wide open on the second to last play of the season. The Rams were so close that even Matt Gay could send it through the uprights to end Tom Brady's career with the playoff loss. Best, Tom Brady retiring even though he can still play. I am so glad he did not leave it all out on the field. Jets, best, backup quarterback Mike White came in for Zach Wilson in Week 8 and took down Joe Burrow and the Bengals. White threw for 405 yards and 3 touchdowns in just his first NFL start. Worst, the Mike White Hall of Fame career ended as quickly as it began. 2 games later, he threw for 0 TDs and 4 picks against the Bills, which is exactly what number 2 overall pick Zach Wilson did Week 2 against the Patriots, looking like the worst quarterback of all time in Foxborough. He also finished the season completing just 35% of his passes against the Bills. Basically, every time the Jets played the Bills, it was definitely a worst for New York. Seahawks best? Seattle kept their slim playoff hopes alive by beating the playoff-bound 49ers at home in Week 13, getting a crucial stop at the goal line to end the game, coming dangerously close to making Jimmy Garoppolo look clutch. DK Metcalf was also ejected from a game during the season because he didn't know how good Shannon Sharp was at football. Worst, having to see Russell Wilson's finger look like this mid-season. Patriots best? beating the Bills in Buffalo 14-10 in the wildest game anyone has ever seen. This was the Patriots' 7th win in a row and gave them sole command of the AFC East. Mac Jones threw the ball just 3 times, completing 2 for 19 yards and a win. Another best was Mac Jones getting away with trying to separate Brian Burns' ankle from his body without being flagged. Worst? Looking like they didn't even belong on the same field as the Buffalo Bills in the wildcard round. The Bills exclusively scored touchdowns in that game. It was a bloodbath. 49ers best, shocking the Packers in freezing temperatures at Lambeau Field, thanks to a blocked punt that was returned for a touchdown and a walk-off field goal by Robbie Solid Gold. I'd have to say the emergence of Deebo Samuel as the greatest running back / wide receiver we've seen in recent memory was very solid as well. Worst? A week later, the 49ers picking the worst time to end their 6-game win streak against the Los Angeles Rams after Jaquiski Tart drops a pick in the 4th quarter of the NFC title game. Eagles, best? Beating the Broncos in Week 10 to turn the Eagles' season around and turn a 3-6 record into an 8-7 finish and a playoff berth in the NFC. Also, a personal best for me was watching Gardner Minshew go 20 for 25 for 242 yards, 2 TDs, and no picks, and 133.7 passer rating in a win, Week 13 against the Jets. Worst? Getting their ass beaten by the Bucs in the wildcard round? When Jalen Hurts throws the ball 43 times, you know you're in trouble. Also, watching the shit excuse for a football stadium that is called FedEx Field nearly killed Jalen Hurts as he exited the game in Washington. Dolphins best. After starting the season 1-7, Miami won 7 straight, which gained steam with the massive upsetting of the Ravens on Thursday Night Football, a game in which Miami blitzed Baltimore 35 times, dropping Lamar Jackson for 4 sacks. That crazy win streak culminated in a classic Monday nighter between Tua and Ian Book of the New Orleans Saints, a true QB duel for the ages and a big moment for the Fins, pushing their record over 500 for the first time since Week 1. Worst. One day after the season ended, the Dolphins fired head coach Brian Flores, hours after he outcoached Bill Belichick. Chargers best. In Week 3, the Chargers pulled out a thrilling victory in Kansas City. Justin Herbert outplayed Patrick Mahomes. All of Brandon Staley's 4th down calls were working, and the Chargers looked like the best team in the AFC West. I also personally enjoyed Austin Eckler's 4-touchdown performance against the Steelers. Worst. At the end of their Week 18 matchup, Brandon Staley called a timeout with less than a minute to go in overtime. Why? No one really knows, but it kept the Raiders from running the clock out and sending both teams to the playoffs. Daniel Carlson nailed a field goal and sent the Chargers home. The Chargers lose, Math loses, the Nerds get stuffed in a locker, and we were robbed of a tie, keeping the Steelers out of the postseason. Giants, best. The Giants retired Dave Gettleman and fired Joe Judge in the same week. That's the best thing this team could have asked for. Worst, it's really hard to pick a worst moment for a team with so many bad moments. I could mention the quarterback sneak on 3rd and 9, the medium soda debacle, Kenny Golladay and Kadarius Toney not scoring touchdowns, or basically any time Mike Glennon or Jake Fromm were in the game. Instead, I'll go back to Week 2 when Washington kicker Dustin Hopkins missed a potential game-winning field goal. Dexter Lawrence was called offsides, and Hopkins got another shot, drilling a 43-yarder and winning the game for the football team. Raiders, best. Playing a 70-minute football game that ended in a walk-off kick that sent the Raiders to the playoffs for just the 2nd time since 2022. Worst?
I'm in the fucking nightmares.
John Gruden getting fired thanks to some emails that covered just about everything you can't say. Worst? Damon Arnett getting cut after brandishing a gun around and making death threats on Instagram Live. Worstest? Henry Ruggs getting behind the wheel of his car with a blood alcohol level of disgusting and horrifically killing a woman in Las Vegas. That's as bad as it gets. Saints, best. shutting out Tom Brady on Sunday Night Football without your starting QB, and Week 1 watching Jameis Winston throw 5 touchdowns in a decisive 38-3 win against the Aaron Rodgers-led Green Bay Packers. We're still missing the playoffs despite beating Tom Brady twice and Aaron Rodgers in the regular season. Worst, you could point to Ian Book's rough game on Monday night. But I think the Saints' worst moment was when Jameis Winston was lost for the season in a Week 8 win against the Buccaneers. At that point, Winston looked like a new QB, throwing 14 touchdowns and just 3 picks in 7 games.
That's how you become great.
Chiefs, best, driving down the field in 13 seconds to tie the Bills in the divisional round before needing just a few plays to end it all in OT. It is nice that the football world is collectively rooting against Kansas City, though, because Patrick Mahomes' brother and wife are just that annoying. Worst, blowing an 18-point lead at home against the Bengals a week later. Oh yeah, for non-Chiefs fans. Our worst was starting to think the Chiefs might actually have some real problems on offense early in the season. Maybe nothing was worse than Tyreek Hill's effort in the 40-yard dash at the Pro Bowl. That's the worst thing he's ever done. Vikings, best, beating arch-rival Packers on a walk-off field goal in one of the most exciting games of the regular season. I'm also partial to Dalvin Cook's 205-yard rushing performance against the Steelers December 9th on Thursday Night Football. Cook was the only running back this season to have a 200-yard rushing game. Worst, having to start Sean Mannion against the Packers on Sunday Night Football because Kirk Cousins tested positive for COVID, and according to Mike Zimmer, Kellen Mond wasn't even close to being ready. Worst, having to pay Kirk Cousins $45 million this upcoming season. The Jaguars, all of the Jags' bests. Obviously, the shocking win against the Buffalo Bills in November in a thrilling 9-6 victory has to be a best, unless maybe Jags fans prefer ousting division rival Colts from the playoffs in the final game. For me, though, it was the fan getting tackled in the end zone during a live play as the official best. Worst, the invention of cell phone videos. And yet, this wasn't even the thing that ended Urban Meyer. No, it was him being an asshole. Josh Lambo telling the world that Urban Meyer kicked him, called him a fucking idiot or something, and wouldn't even call special teams players by their names. Rams, best, trading for Matthew Stafford last offseason and then going all out to win a Super Bowl by also trading for Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr. mid-season to bolster their roster, and it actually working. The rise of playoff Stafford is a huge best, probably a best for Lions fans as well, specifically viral sensation AJ.
Clock it! Get on the fucking line! Clock that shit! Clock it! Clock it! Yes!
For me was the Robert Woods injury. This happened a week after OBJ came in, and I'm glad OBJ is playing well, but damn, Robert Woods is my most underrated dude in the NFL. Just a great receiver who does all the dirty work in addition to moving the sticks, and I would have loved to see him play in the Super Bowl. Colts best, Jonathan Taylor taking 5 trips to the end zone in a 41-15 win on the road in Buffalo. Taylor was an MVP candidate until Carson Wentz got in the way. Worst, getting absolutely blown out in a must-win Week 18 game against the bottom-feeding Jaguars. After taking care of the ball pretty much all year, Wentz turned the ball over twice and took 6 sacks in Saxonville. Packers, best, Rasul Douglas making a game-saving interception against the Cardinals on Thursday Night Football. Imagine that, a practice squad signing helping propel their season to the #1 seed in the NFC. Worst, getting sent home in the playoff opener against Jimmy G and the 49ers. The mystique of the frozen tundra did not intimidate San Francisco, and everything the Packers special teams did was wrong. Biggest waste of a 4-pick season I've ever seen. Save Aaron Rodgers and send him to Denver. Texans, best, Well, the best thing the Texans did in 2021 was give Davis Mills a shot. And he grabbed the job moving forward, in my opinion, especially when he outplayed Justin Herbert in a Week 17 win against the Chargers, finishing with 4 wins with Davis Mills, while doing the same with Deshaun Watson in 2020. Pretty impressive. Worst?
I mean, I've got 22 Deshaun Watson reasons, but we're not going to do that today.
David Culley declined a penalty against the Browns that would have given the Texans 3rd and 10. Instead, Culley opted for 4th and 2. So they were going to go for it, right? Wrong. They punted. Essentially, the Texans opted to punt instead of give it a shot on 3rd and 10. So maybe Houston wasn't so crazy to fire him. Lions, best? Well, this came in Week 13 against the Vikings when Jared Goff hit Amon-Ra St. Brown on the last play of regulation to give Detroit their first win of the season. We all won too when we got a chance to see Jared Goff's girlfriend.
Cause the Lions won a game, bitch. I said the Lions won a game. Bitch, we going all the way.
We're gonna get up, and on the way up, we're gonna bite a kneecap off, all right?
Yay, cannibalism! It was a tough season overall for Detroit, but the low point was a Thanksgiving loss against Andy Dalton and the Bears that put the Lions at 0-10-1. Broncos, best? The Broncos beat the living shit out of the Cowboys in Jerry World back in Week 9, jumping out to a 30-0 lead. That win put Denver above 500 and made them look like a playoff team with 2 great running backs and a solid game manager at QB. Worst? In a mid-season loss to the Eagles at home, Melvin Gordon fumbled the ball on 4th down. Darius Slay picked it up and got past Teddy Bridgewater, who made no attempt to tackle Slay. Just an awful play by almost everyone on the offense and symbolic of the season as a whole. Also Pat Shurmur and everything he ever did or ever said worst. Cowboys, best? Beating the Washington football team, now Commanders, 56-14 on Sunday Night Football. You can bring your own benches. Doesn't really matter. Worst? Dallas running the worst QB draw in NFL history. The Chiefs only needed 13 seconds to get into field goal range. The Cowboys needed 14 for one QB draw to bounce themselves from the playoffs. Browns, best? Denzel Ward picking off Joe Burrow and taking it back 99 yards in a 41-16 victory over the team that would eventually represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. I'll also credit Baker Mayfield for playing through an entire season with some really bad injuries, even though he probably cost himself a lot of money and looked horrible doing it. Worst? Watching your cross-state rivals, the Bengals, play former Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham in the Super Bowl while you sit at home. Who's got poop on their chest now, Cleveland? Bears, best? Matt Nagy getting flagged for yelling at the officials after Bears fans yelled, "Fire Nagy" all season long. Worst? Bears fans yelling, "Fire Nagy" at his high school kid's game. He's gonna get a chance to turn it around, but Justin Fields had a rough rookie season, with his worst moment coming in a 35-point loss to the Bucs, where Fields turned the ball over 5 times. Worcester, the Bears also became the poster team for the worst taunting penalty in the history of the game. Cassius Marsh got flagged for posturing towards the Steelers' sideline in a game the Steelers eventually won due to that flag. It was the dumbest penalty I've ever seen. Ever. Panthers, best? Getting off to a 3-0 start behind Sam Darnold's arm. Really? Letting us all shit on Adam Gase's coaching ability one last time. Worst? Everything that happened after I cursed the Panthers in my Power Rankings episode, starting with Sam Darnold's injury, which led to the Panthers bringing back Cam Newton, which for a brief moment was a best. Cam scoring a touchdown in his first game back was vindicating for the former MVP, but that was fleeting. Worst, Cam Newton going 5 for 21 in a 23-point loss to the Miami Dolphins. Sam Darnold finishing the season with 9 TDs and 13 picks, which was technically worse than what Gase got out of him, and the Panthers became a meme for their QB situation. The dumbest stat of all time. The Panthers were paying Cam Newton's replacement. Cam Newton's replacements replacement and for Cam Newton to replace his own replacement. Falcons worst. Watching all three of the Falcons quarterbacks throw a pick in the same game against the Patriots. All three which came in the final 5 minutes of the game. Matt Ryan threw a pick and then was replaced by Josh Rosen because the game was out of reach. Josh Rosen immediately threw a pick and was replaced by Felipe Franks, who immediately threw a pick, and they all happened in basically the same place on the field. Best, Cordarrelle Patterson's career resurrection. I'm not sure what happened at the end of the season, but damn, Patterson was fun to watch until that last month of football. He finished with 548 receiving yards, 618 rushing yards, 11 touchdowns, and I kind of hope the Dolphins sign him for Mike McDaniel to deploy like Deebo Samuel. Cardinals, best, beating up on the eventual NFC champ LA Rams 37-20 back in week 4. Optimism was high and no one knew the Rams would come back to beat them 2 more times in 2021. Worst, Kyler Murray throwing the shortest pick 6 in playoff history against the Rams. And also it was just 3 yards. Ravens, best.
Justin Tucker winning MVP after setting a record-breaking field goal from 66 yards, which was a game-winning walk-off kick against the Lions.
Worst, finishing the season on a 6-game losing streak with 5 of those losses coming within 3 points or less, and all of it being because Lamar Jackson was injured. The Bills, best. The complete evisceration of the Patriots in the postseason, which brought back both Bildo and Ryan Fitzmagic. Watching a current NFL QB root for his former team shirtless in the stands with the fans was one of the coolest things I've ever watched. And it was perfect that it was for the Bills. Worst? Oh man, a week later, watching Josh Allen go toe-to-toe with Patrick Mahomes, lead a miraculous game-winning drive only to see his defense, which had been incredible all year long, allow KC to get into field goal range and tie up the game with just 13 seconds on the clock, then losing the game in overtime because Josh Allen didn't even get to touch the fucking ball. Knowing Josh Allen had one of the greatest quarterback performances in the playoffs, and his team still lost, is a hard pill to swallow. And finally, the Bengals, best, getting to the Super Bowl for the first time since 1988, winning a playoff game for the first time since 1991, but most importantly, getting Joe Burrow back on the field after he tore his ACL in 2020, and the Jamar Chase draft pick being an absolute slam dunk. Joe Burrow throwing for 525 yards against division rival Ravens, a best, and shit, just learning how passionate the Bengals fan base is a huge best. Worst, letting your QB get sacked 9 times in a playoff game. And if you lose the Super Bowl, that will be your worst, but not as bad as if the Rams lose the Super Bowl. So, congrats, Cincinnati. Boom, thanks for watching That's Good Sports, the best and worst for every team this season. Make sure you come back for the Super Bowl best and worst the day after the Super Bowl. I appreciate you guys watching these videos all season long. You can watch another that's up on the screen right now if it tickles your fancy.